So you've finished filling out the voluntary petition, and now you're ready to keep moving in this journey of filling out all these bankruptcy forms. And so the next petition you need to fill out are the schedules. The next forms you need to fill out, I should say, are the schedules. If we open up this side panel on the left here, you'll see that for Ashley, our example filer, that she's got a check mark next to the petition because she's completed that form. And now we want to start working on the schedules. And I've selected the first schedule, which is Schedule A and B. This schedule is meant to tell the court what are your assets, what property is it that you own. That's the purpose of this form. And so just like with the petition, I'm going to go down and generate a new clean copy of this form. And I'll open it with Adobe. I'll close that and open it with Adobe. Now you can see Schedule AB is actually called property, and that's because it's supposed to disclose what property it is that you own. So let's get started. The first part is to go ahead and enter your name in. I'll put in Ashley's full name as she entered it, as well as the location where you're filing your bankruptcy. In Ashley's case, she selected the Northern District of Alabama, like we saw on the voluntary petition. So we filled this part out. Like I said, we're not dealing with a joint debtor case, so we leave this part blank. She left this part blank. And there's no case number that's been assigned yet, so this part was left blank as well. Okay, so let's move on to part one, which is describe each residence, building, land, or other real estate that you own or that you have any sort of interest in. I would say, generally speaking, if you do own land, including your home, if you own your home, I would highly encourage you to consult with a bankruptcy attorney and to consider hiring a bankruptcy attorney. Owning a home has a lot of legal repercussions that make it much, much more difficult to successfully complete a bankruptcy case. In a lot of cases, people generally want to end up filing a Chapter 13, which is a little more complex than our website allows for. So if you own property, I would, again, strongly encourage you to at least consult with an attorney. In Ashley's case, she didn't own any property, any real estate, I should say. And so she selected no for this part. Again, that makes her case a good example of one that this website is meant to help for. She doesn't own a home, and that makes her case a lot simpler, we'll say. So she selects no, and the form tells her to go to part two. You can see all of these things that, you'd have to fill out if you own property, and that is, what is the property, who all has an interest in the property, what's the value. She doesn't own any real estate, so she doesn't have to fill that out. Okay, part two. Do you own, lease, or have legal or equitable interest in any vehicles, whether they are registered or not? This basically asks, do you own a car? In Ashley's case, she did own a car, and so she selected the yes box. And filled in the make, model, year, approximate mileage, and other details about the property. And so I'll show you here how she filled that information in. She owned a Volvo. The model was an SST. The year was 2013. She listed her mileage as 118,008. The next part asks who has an interest in this property. So that would include a situation where maybe you've got two joint owners of a car. In her case, that doesn't apply. So she selected debtor one only because she's the only person who had an interest in this property. She left the other information blank. This might include, details about, if the car's been in a wreck or something like that, and, you've got a really low value and the trustee might wonder why. That may be something you put in there, but she left this part blank. Okay, so current value of the entire property. That's asking what's the value of the vehicle. And she estimated that the value of the vehicle was $8,925. I'm not sure how she arrived at that valuation. She might have consulted the Kelley Blue Book value. There's a number of ways to evaluate that, but that was the amount she selected. So the next question is current value of the portion that you own. Now, since she owned the entire vehicle herself, she put the same amount, which is $8,925. And so that's, in extent, the end of this section. She owns one car, and she lists it here. And so Ashley finishes part 2 at that. Or she didn't finish part 2. She finished the automotive part of this schedule after that. Okay. Question 4. Watercraft, aircraft, motorhomes, ATVs, and other recreational vehicles, other vehicles, and accessories. Do you own any of these? In Ashley's case, she did not. If you do, obviously you need to disclose those to the court and fill them in here. So that is that. The next part is add the dollar value of the portion you own for all of these entries, including any entries for the pages you've also attached. In her case, again, Ashley's case is very simple. She doesn't own a home, and she owns one car. And so all she has to do to add all of this amount up is just include the value of her car. And that is, like we saw above, $8,925. Okay, so we are done with part 2 for Ashley's case. Let's move on to part 3. And that is, describe your personal and household items. Do you own or have any legal or equitable interest in any of the following items? This is essentially what personal items do you have in your house that have value? And so I'll show you here how Ashley filled that part out. The first, question 6, household goods and furnishings. That would include major appliances, furniture, linens, china, and kitchenware. And she does own some of these things, and she simply describes them as household goods. I'm not sure what that includes. It probably includes maybe some appliances, maybe some, china, things like that. But she estimates the total value of all of those items to be $1,500. And so that's what she put in the estimate of value. Next, electronics. Do you own any electronics? That would include TVs, radios, stereo equipment, computers, printer scanners, things like that. You can read this entire section to see what it all includes. She selected no here. My guess is that's presumably because she was living with a family member who had some of those things. Okay, collectibles of value. Antiques, figurines, baseball cards. If you have any of these and they have value at all, please disclose them to the bankruptcy court. In Ashley's situation, she did not, so she selected no. Equipment for sports and hobbies, again, pretty self-explanatory. Ashley, again, stated no, she did not, and so she didn't have to disclose any value here. Similarly, for firearms, she does not. She states that she does not own any firearms, and so she can move on to the next section. Jewelry, she hits the yes button. She apparently did have some jewelry, and she estimated that it was worth $1,200. Not sure how she got to that estimate, but you use the most reliable means of estimation that you have. Non-farm animals, dogs, cats, birds, or horses. Seems a little strange that the court would be asking for that, but in Ashley's case, she put no. Okay. Any other personal or household items that you did not already list, including any health aids that you did not list? In Ashley's case, she put no. I think I accidentally hit no for clothes, and Ashley hit no for firearms, and actually hit yes for clothes. She does own clothing, which is good, and she estimates that the value of that clothing is $500. So that's how she filled out part 3. To take a quick look at that, she, again, very simple case. So you might have a lot more complexity in terms of what are the things you own. You might have electronics, you might have collectibles, you might have equipment or firearms, and you do need to disclose all that to the bankruptcy court. So in her example, she had household goods, which she estimated at $1,500. She had clothing, estimated at $500. She had jewelry at $1,200, and that was it. Okay, and so if she adds all the dollar amount of all of those items up, it comes to $3,200. Now, keep in mind that in a lot of situations, and in Ashley's situation, a lot of these different things are going to fall under what are called exemptions, which mean that if you declare them in your exemption schedule, you're not going to have to give them up. And the bankruptcy code says for things like this that really aren't all that valuable and that are really actually difficult to sell, you won't have to give these up to the bankruptcy trustee. That's just something to keep in mind as we keep moving through this process. Okay, let's move on to part 4. Do you own or have any legal or equitable interest in any of the following things? The first is cash. And I guess she didn't have any cash on hand when she filed the bankruptcy, which is certainly a possibility for many people, and so she selected no. 17, deposits of money. This would include checking accounts, savings accounts, things like that. There are a number of other things that are listed here. In Ashley's example, she hit yes, and she disclosed that she had a checking account at Wood Forest Bank, and the total amount in that checking account was $3. Not a whole lot of money, obviously, but it's important to disclose anything that you do have to the bankruptcy court. So that's what she did here. Question 18, bonds, mutual funds, publicly traded stocks. If you own any of those, you'd need to fill them in here. And if you have more than 3 that you need to list, you'd need to include an attachment. In her example, she selected the no option. Non-publicly traded stocks and interest in incorporated and unincorporated businesses. That would include if you own part of an LLC or a partnership. In Ashley's example, she selected no. Okay. Government and corporate bonds. Again, same situation. If you have more than 3 that you need to list, you'd need to include an attachment to disclose them all to the bankruptcy court. Ashley, again, selected no for this example. Retirement or pension accounts. It asks you to explain what those are. Ashley, again, did not have any retirement or pension accounts. Security deposits and prepayments. This would include, for example, most relevant to most people would be a security deposit with their landlord, and that's listed right here, agreements with landlords. Ashley did not rent any property, as we saw earlier, and so she selected no here. Annuities, Ashley selected no. Interest in education IRA or in an account in a qualified ABLE program or under a qualified state tuition program, Ashley selected no. And I'll just make this a bit faster. For these next 3, Ashley selected no. So she did not have an interest in trust, equitable, future interest in property. She does not own any patents, copyright, trademarks, etc., and she does not own any licenses, franchises, etc. Again, if you do have interests or own any of these things, you do need to disclose them to the bankruptcy court. Okay. Money or property owed to you is the next section, and that includes things like, first, tax refund. So if you filed your tax return and you're owed money, but you have not received it yet, you would include that here. And so you would include details, including whether you already filed the returns in the tax years. In her example, she selected no. Family support, this would be alimony that you're owed, child support that you're owed, and that's included in these examples. She was not owed anything like that, and so she selected no. other amounts someone owes you, any reason you're owed any money. Maybe you've loaned a friend money. Maybe you've got a workers' compensation claim that's going to be paying out. These are all the examples that the court lists, and it's not exhaustive. So if you have any other type of situation where you're owed money from someone else, you do need to disclose it to the bankruptcy court. In her example, she was not owed money by anyone else. Okay. And continuing to move on, I'll speed this up for the sake of time. She does not own. She selected no for each of the following, and that includes insurance policies, any interest in property that someone else died and you might be inheriting property. That did not apply to her. Claims against third parties, that includes automobile accidents, things like that. She selected no. Contingent and unliquidated claims of every nature, including counterclaims of the debtor and right to set off claims. I won't get into too much detail about what this might include, but again, it highlights the point that if you're owed absolutely anything, you need to disclose it to the bankruptcy court. She selected no here. Any other financial assets she didn't already list, she said she's listed everything, and she selected no. Okay, so now it asks, add the dollar value of all the entries from Part 4. If you'll recall, the only thing she actually listed from Part 4 that she owns is her checking account with $3 in it, so that's all she listed. Okay, Part 5, describe any business-related property you own or have interest in. List any real estate in Part 1. Do you have any legal interest in any business-related property? No, she didn't own a business, so she selected no. Do you own accounts receivable or commissions? She selected no. Office equipment, furnishing, no. And I'm sorry, I'm answering things she didn't have to answer because if you'll look here, devil's in the details. It says go to Part 6. So she answered no, and she went on. She could skip all this, which you can do if you answer no as well. And I'm not going to get into details about all these things because for a lot of people, these are not going to apply. Okay, Part 6, describe any farm and commercial fishing-related property you own or have an interest in. In her example, she selected no. She does not own or have an interest in any of these things, so she selected no, and it instructed her to move on to Part 7. Describe all property you own that you didn't list above. She says she's already listed everything, and so she doesn't need to list anything else. It asks to add the Okay, so we finished up through Part 7, and we've got a full picture of what Ashley owns here. And so at Part 8, it just says, basically, tell us what everything is worth. That's what we're interested in. So let's fill that in as Ashley did. Ashley said, I have $0 in real estate, like I've listed above. I've got one car, and that's worth $8,925. Of all my personal and household items, that added up to $3,200. My total in financial assets, which was my checking account, is $3. And then you'll recall for the rest of these other items, it was $0. And so she selected $0. Adding up all of this, everything, you'll note that it adds up to $12,128. And so that's what I've selected in all of these boxes. I apologize, you can't see that fully because of the video camera, but that is what she listed in total for her Schedule A. So that's Schedule A. We've done that, and we finished that part here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save as. And like I did before, I'm going to go ahead and save it in the desktop. I'll call this one Schedule A. Straightforward enough, and I'll save it, and I'll close it. And now you'll notice that Ashley hasn't saved anything else in Schedule A, and so the file saved shows none, but we're going to go ahead and save it now And so we go in desktop, we go click Schedule A, and hit save. And it goes ahead and saves this file. And once you see it pop up here, you know that it's fully done its job. It's saved. It's on the system. And again, we can come back. We can open it up, and we can go right back to where we left off anytime we want. Everything that we just selected is saved. Okay, so that's a really nice feature. Now that we've saved it, if we're completely done, we can come up here, select completed, and you'll note if I open up the side panel, I'll see a check mark. If I go back and decide, okay, there's something I want to revisit in this form, I can click in progress, and if I open this up again, the check mark will be gone. For now, we're going to say Ashley has filled out everything properly, and we're ready to move on, so I'll hit completed. And that finishes Schedule A and B. So thanks for bearing with me through this, and we'll see you again for Schedule C. Thanks, guys.